Laura has known for a long time that something isn't right. Not because they argue every day or because something dramatic happened, but because little by little the relationship stopped feeling alive. Dinner became quieter, conversations became shorter, and somehow, sitting next to the person you love started to feel lonelier than sitting by yourself. She notices all of it, yet, every time she gets close to admitting the truth, her mind quietly offers another explanation. Maybe he's just exhausted. Maybe work has been difficult lately. Maybe every long relationship eventually feels this way. The human brain has a remarkable talent. It can negotiate with almost any reality if the alternative feels too painful. I'm Dr. Maya, and today, we're not investigating why Laura stays. We're investigating why seeing the truth is sometimes still not enough to leave. Because understanding a relationship and emotionally letting go of it are two completely different psychological processes. Sometimes people don't stay because they're in love with the relationship anymore. They stay because they're still in love with the future they hoped that relationship would become. If you asked Laura whether she was happy, she probably wouldn't know how to answer. Nothing looks bad enough to complain about, yet nothing feels quite right either. So instead of asking herself whether this relationship is making her happy, she keeps asking a different question. Can I make it work? Our brains love impossible jobs. Give them another person to fix, and they'll immediately update the to-do list. And that small change in the question changes everything. Because once your mind becomes responsible for saving the relationship, it quietly stops evaluating whether the relationship is also taking care of you. Only later do we discover that this way of loving didn't begin here. It began much earlier, when Laura made a promise she was too young to realize she was making. At first, the changes were almost invisible. It wasn't one big disappointment that made Laura question the relationship. It was dozens of tiny moments that never seemed important enough on their own. A conversation that ended too quickly, a message answered hours later, a story she wanted to tell that somehow never found the right moment. Each time she felt a small wave of disappointment, and each time, almost automatically, she softened it before it had a chance to become the truth. He's probably tired. He's under a lot of pressure. This isn't really a big deal. Have you noticed something interesting? Laura never lies to herself. She simply edits reality until it becomes emotionally easier to live with. Our minds are surprisingly good editors. Unfortunately, they don't always edit in our favor. After a while, this no longer feels like a choice. It becomes a habit. And habits are dangerous because they stop feeling like something we're doing. They start feeling like who we are. By now, we've collected enough clues to see something important. Laura isn't confused. She isn't in denial. And she isn't staying because she can't see what's happening. She's staying because two different parts of her are trying to protect her at the same time. One part wants the truth because the truth offers freedom. The other wants certainty because certainty feels safe, even when it quietly hurts. Here's the part most people miss. These two parts are not enemies. They're both trying to help. One is protecting Laura's future, the other is protecting her from uncertainty. And when those two goals collide, the mind almost always chooses the option that feels familiar. That's why staying doesn't feel like a decision anymore. It feels like the only reasonable thing to do. Patterns like this rarely begin in adulthood. By the time Laura met her husband, this way of loving already felt natural. Not because she consciously chose it, but because many years earlier, she had quietly learned a rule that never needed words. As a little girl, Laura often noticed the silence between her parents, long before she understood what it meant. No one shouted, no one left. Life simply continued. And without realizing it, she reached a simple conclusion. If something feels wrong, you stay calm, you try harder, and eventually things will get better. Children almost never decide what they believe about love. They observe it. Then they build their future around those observations. The rules that guide our adult relationships are often written long before we know we're writing them. Laura didn't remember making that promise, but she had been living by it for years. This is where most people make a mistake. They assume Laura is still protecting the relationship. But by now, that isn't really what she's protecting anymore. She's protecting the version of herself who still believes she can make it work. Because if the relationship truly ends, something else has to end with it. The identity of the woman who kept trying, kept hoping, and kept believing that one more conversation, one more effort, or one more year might finally change everything. Our identities are surprisingly stubborn. Once we build a story about who we are, our minds will often defend that story, even when it hurts us. Losing a relationship is painful. Losing the person you believed yourself to be can feel even more frightening. And that's why letting go doesn't begin with walking away from another person. It begins with becoming someone who no longer needs the old story in order to feel whole. Understanding a pattern doesn't make it disappear overnight. Laura doesn't wake up the next morning feeling fearless, and she doesn't suddenly know exactly what to do. The difference is much smaller than that, but it's also much more important. For the first time, she notices the moment when her mind begins writing another excuse. And instead of automatically believing it, she becomes curious. She asks herself a different question. Not, how can I save this relationship? But, what is this relationship asking me to give up about myself? That single question changes the direction of everything. Because awareness doesn't immediately change your life. It changes the choices you stop making automatically. And that's where every real transformation begins. Real change rarely begins with a dramatic decision. Most of the time, it begins with a quiet moment that almost nobody else notices. The moment you catch yourself repeating an old pattern and choose not to follow it automatically. If you recognize yourself in Laura's story, don't ask yourself whether you should stay or leave. That question may come later. Today, ask yourself something much simpler. When was the last time I ignored my own feelings because protecting the relationship felt more important? Write down the first honest answer that comes to mind. Don't edit it. Don't explain it. Just notice it. Because every pattern you've seen today once helped you survive. It deserves understanding, not shame, but understanding is only the beginning. The next chapter of your life will be written by the choices you make after awareness arrives. I'm Dr. Maya. Thank you for investigating human nature with me. If you'd like to continue this investigation, I've created a free 20-minute relationship investigation workbook. It's designed to help you understand the emotional pattern behind one real relationship situation and discover one small change that can make future conversations feel different. You'll find the link in the description below. See you in the next investigation.